Okay, at some point, your kids are going to ask you questions about your past you aren't quite sure how to answer. Hey, Mom, did you drink beer in high school? Hey, Dad, were you a virgin when you got married? All right, here with help on what and how to answer these personal information questions is teen expert Barb Steinberg is back with us today. Barb, I'm even giggling saying those questions because I'm dreading those. I don't like people asking me questions. I ask people questions. It's my job. So kids asking things that you don't want to answer is super difficult.
It is. It is. And some kids obviously ask more questions than others. So if you know you have an extrovert that likes to know personal information about people, then you know that these questions are coming.
So why is it that we cringe or we lie or we don't necessarily reveal things to our kids?
Yeah, I would say there are two probably big reasons for that. One is some of us don't really like to show that we were imperfect when we were teenagers and we made mistakes and we broke rules and so on. And we also are afraid that if we share that information about what we did that maybe was a failure or something that we're embarrassed about, that our kids will take that as a sign that they can also make that choice.
Right. So should you be sharing these things, and what should you share and not share?
Yes. So what are the benefits of sharing your past with your teenagers? One is that if you're open and honest and vulnerable about choices that you made, again, that maybe you're not so proud of, or maybe they've had a negative impact on your life, that by you being vulnerable and honest to a degree, then they might also be. So they get a sense of like, oh, you've been through similar situations or certain circumstances. Maybe you've had similar feelings that I've had as a teenager. So now I know that you have some sense of what it's like to be a teenager. So now I'm more willing to share with you mistakes that I have made as a teenager.
I feel like the risks are higher now. Maybe not. Maybe I was just a good teenager. But in general, I feel like there's so many scary things that our kids can be getting into and vulnerable to. So you kind of want to protect them a little bit.
Yeah, of course, as parents, we absolutely want to protect them. And to be honest, sometimes protecting them is giving them honest information about what's out there, what could happen, but also giving them personal information that's age appropriate about what choices we may have made that we now think was a mistake or something that we're ashamed of or embarrassed about that we would have done differently. So it's not just about sharing, hey, I drank at this age or I had sex at this age. It's also giving them the wisdom of, here's why I think I made that decision now looking back. Here's how I think it impacted the other people around me. And here's how I would do it differently. Here's what I learned. And that's the most important part that they need to know about our past.
And really, as a parent, it's more about the relationship building a little bit as well, because you want your kids to be able to come to you.
Absolutely. So, I really see that when we begin to get personal with our teenagers in particular, again, age appropriate sharing, but as we get vulnerable and intimate with them and sharing some personal information, that's really when their ears perk up. So when we're running around saying, don't do that, this is bad, this is wrong, or do as I say, not as I do, that doesn't really fly with teenagers these days. They're very wise and savvy. And the more that we can be vulnerable with them and share those parts of ourselves, the more willing they are to do that with us. And really, when they're making mistakes or choices that could be dangerous or scary, we want them to come to us and tell them, I did this, or I'm thinking about doing this.
No, exactly. But you just mentioned, age appropriate. And that's the hard part. I mean, some parents are very honest about certain things at super young ages, and it's great. Or some wait till a certain age. What is age appropriate? Because we're talking about teens, but what if your 10-year-old comes to you with some of these questions?
Yeah, so we need to think about, when and where do we edit sharing, our youthful acting out and the risk taking that we did at a younger age. So we want to think about how old is this child? Where are they developmentally? So we know that the frontal lobe is the last part of the brain to develop as late as age 25. So what's happening in the frontal lobe? Well, that's where judgment takes place, impulse control. So we want to make sure that they have both of those things intact. They have their value system intact. and that they're able to understand the nuances of the situation that you were in when you made that mistake, so to speak. So that's how we're determining how much we want to edit and how much we want to share.
So do you actually use yourself as the example, if you can, at times when they're making mistakes? Or do you not reveal at that point?
Sure, if you feel like it is age appropriate, and again, that they would understand the nuances of it, and they would also, be able to understand what was going on at that time for you, then that may feel intuitively like, yes, this is the right time and age and stage for me to share this story with them.
But the reason why they're coming to you and actually asking you these questions is probably for a reason.
Absolutely. So there are two probably main reasons of why they do that. One is one of the most important developmental tasks that they're undergoing during adolescence is identity, developing their identity. And a big part of their identity is, what are my values? What do I value? What do I think is important? What do I believe in? Well, they've listened to us as parents talk about what our values are, and now they're watching the adults in their lives. You say these are your values, but what are your actions? Do they line up with your values? So if I'm running around telling my teenager, hey, there's no drinking and driving, then when I go out to dinner and have 2 glasses of wine, I need to hand my keys over to my partner and say, I really need you to drive. I've been drinking. So now they know the values and the actions line up. The second reason why they might be asking about your past is they're grappling with, do I feel like this decision that I'm thinking about is right for me? So we want to turn the question around and ask them to be self-reflective. So when they say, hey, how old were you when you started drinking? My first question might be, so tell me why you're asking that. Are your friends, when you go to parties, are people drinking alcohol? What's happening in your world right now? So that gives me information about where they are and why they're really asking these questions. So sometimes it's really a lot less about us and it's really more about them.
No, so true. And what do you say back to them when they say that, you can't relate? You have no idea what it's like?
Yeah, I would be really honest and I would say, you're right. There's a big part of me that has no idea what it's like to be a 17-year-old in 2022 post-COVID. So I need you to educate me, teach me, what is it like at your high school or at your parties or your friend group? And at the same time, we can also say, I have been a 17-year-old before, so I do have some sense of what it's like with girls' friendships or with academic stresses or getting along with parents or fighting with siblings. I do understand some of that to a degree. Some of it I don't, so I would love for you to educate me.
Such good advice, Barb. Thank you so much. Good to see you again.
You too. Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah, great tips, and we're going to have more information about Barb on our website at katu.com. But don't go away. Afternoon Live. We'll be right back.